I am not sure how they did it, but the most recent patch for Final Fantasy XIV, patch 5.3, Reflections in Crystal, is probably the most impactful patch I have seen in the entire Shadowbringers expansion. Well, actually, not just the Shadowbringers expansion, the entire game thus far. Although, quick spoiler alert for those of you that have not played through the Shadowbringers expansion or have yet to participate in the 5.3 patch content, you have been warned. So, 5.3 actually marks the end of the Shadowbringers storyline. Patch 5.4 and 5.5 are going to transition between the Shadowbringers expansion and the expansion slated for release in the middle of next year. An expansion that would have actually been announced already, if not for the situation that is currently going on in the world right now. But I'm content knowing that the team over at Square, the team working on Final Fantasy XIV, are safe and still hard at work to the best of their abilities. This is probably one of the most satisfying conclusions I have ever seen in a story arc in an MMO to date. And while I heard a lot of people did cry, and I definitely did not cry, I didn't. Guys, seriously, come on. Do I look like the kind of person that would break down in tears? You know what? Actually, don't answer that. We got a touching final moment with our good old buddy, the Crystal Exarch. We managed to save the Scions as they were on the brink of death and make it all the way back to the source, all in one piece. And with a brand new addition to our team as well, Grahatia himself. And oh my god, is he the most precious character I've ever seen in the entire franchise thus far.
Henceforth, I shall count myself a scion of the seventh dawn.
A few moments later.
But it wouldn't be an end to a patch without our buddy Xenos making an appearance, looking as somber as ever. And we get a guest appearance from the eccentric new rogue Ascian, Fandaniel, who I am highly anticipating watching evolve into a very interesting character. I mean, come on, just take a moment here and listen to this guy. While the patch brought an end to the Shadowbringers story arc, it also brought quite a bit more with it. That's right, the most important new feature added was the extension to the free trial. Originally, you could play until level 35, and then you'd be locked out of any further progression. As of patch 5.3, you're now given hundreds of hours worth of the game completely free, providing access to the entire base game, and then the entire first expansion pack, Heavensward, allowing you to level all the way up to level 60, gain access to the Aura race, the Dark Knight, the Machinist, and the Astrologian classes, and all of the subsequent patch content that came between Heavensward and Stormblood, with Heavensward being the point in the game that players generally consider the turning point, where the game gets considerably better. Players who had an impression of the game after playing the first several hours on the way to level 35 are now going to be given the opportunity to really invest time and effort into the game. And let's be honest here, if after completing Heavensward you are not already a fan of the game, or at least enjoying the game in some capacity, then Stormblood is not going to change your mind. And now is actually the perfect time to go on ahead and jump on in. They've revamped the leveling experience, removing quests and other clutter from the main scenario, making it faster for players to clear the mess that is the post of Realm Reborn patch content. And by mess, I don't necessarily mean that the content is bad, I just mean that the content isn't necessarily good. Like, you guys know what I mean, right? That content has turned off many a player and is not in any way representative of the content we get literally as soon as you're done with it and begin Heavensward, which is why you so often find people saying just stick with it, it gets better. Guys, no, trust me, I know how that sounds, but it really does. Honestly, I wish World of Warcraft would take a note or two from this and provide more of the game for free than it already does. This is going to provide an even larger boost to the active player base and breathe so much more life into the game. Not that it really needed it. As per every patch, we got a brand new dungeon, which honestly wasn't as exciting or aesthetically appealing as some of the other dungeons introduced throughout Shadowbringers, but we also got the second Nier Automata 24-player raid, and let me tell you, once again, spoiler alert ahead, but holy crap, I did not expect to ever see 2B in Final Fantasy XIV. Lord have mercy on my poor soul. The raid itself was a lot of fun, although not as mechanically difficult or demanding as the Orban Monastery. That remains actually, one of the most difficult raids to get through, with a full party of players making mistakes because they cannot follow directions or don't know what they're doing, which is fine, we'll have to start somewhere. Now, I love that Yoko Taro has a hand in the 24-player content in this expansion along with the story that accompanies it. It is refreshing to see little sub-stories that have absolutely no relation to the main story taking place and being equally as appreciated and populated. And do not get me started on the outfits that you get from each of them. Eesh, they are just too much for my heart. Then came the introduction of the new Shiva Unreal trial, which I was surprised to see that people found as easy as they did. I know that mechanics were the same as the original Shiva, but man, did we have trouble back when running Shiva for the first time. We definitely did not have a day one clear, but then I have never been a day one progger anyway. I also found it weird that while Shiva Savage was current content, we would also have Unreal Shivas or new content as opposed to taking something else like Ravana. That would have been a very, very fun Unreal trial to tackle. Going forward, they do plan on rotating which boss gets upscaled to our level, so it's a safe bet to assume that we will get to see every previous trial as current content at one point, but it may be quite a wait considering how many different bosses there are in total. I have never ever been a crafter in MMOs, and although it does look fairly engaging and like quite a bit of fun in Final Fantasy XIV, I still cannot see myself ever getting into it. I just cannot for the life of me dedicate time to the art of crafting. I would rather pay people to craft for me and reap the rewards of not having to put in any effort. Okay, wait. No, that's not what I meant to say. That came out wrong. I would rather pay people for their hard work and their efforts. There we go. That was what I actually meant to say. As you can expect, we are talking about crafting after all. There were updates to crafting, there were new Game Plus updates, there were new mounts and minions added into the game, an expansion to the Ishgard restoration, the new resistance weapon quest. Well, actually that is slated for patch 5.35, so we got a few weeks to wait on that. There is just a ridiculous amount of content that Final Fantasy XIV pushes out regularly. More content than I have ever seen any other company push out in the time span that Square does with Final Fantasy XIV. Now, don't get me wrong, the Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, Black Desert Online, even World of Warcraft pushes out tons of content, but not with the same flavor, not with the same variety, not with the same level of detail, the same depth, and that is one of the main reasons that I think the game has been steadily on the incline. Where all of the aforementioned MMOs have slowly declined in terms of active players over the last couple years, Final Fantasy XIV has shown that not only is Shadowbringers its most popular expansion to date, but they're repeatedly hitting new highs in terms of concurrent active players and total players alike. If you watched my most populated MMORPGs in 2020 video over the weekend, I went into a little more detail regarding how they've had several million new players register for the game this year, and how they claimed over 1.2 million active players as well, closing in on the 2 million active that WoW has. Mrs. Styx has played through quite a bit more of the content than I have. I have never really been a competitive progger in Final Fantasy XIV. She, however, has cleared Savage Shiva, which, you know what, I am actually very proud of. I'm a very proud husbando right here. She worked ridiculously hard to achieve that, and you guys can imagine how difficult it is working with other players to tackle some of the most challenging encounters in the game, especially with all of these entitled, self-proclaimed pro players judging you and every little mistake that every single player in the group makes. Like, I think the toxicity in the endgame raiding community is probably the only instance that I have found of toxicity in the entire game. Generally, I'm of the opinion that Final Fantasy XIV is the nicest community of any MMO community, except for probably Guild Wars 2, until you get into raiding. Then everyone turns into WoW players. And don't take this the wrong way, I'm sure it's just a vocal minority, but you cannot tell me you have not noticed it either. I have had players actually stop raiding competitively because they cannot handle all of the stress and the insults they get over making small mistakes while learning the fight. It is honestly very disheartening. And it is also one of the reasons that I do not competitively raid anymore. Not because I cannot handle criticism. I mean, nobody will ever be a larger critic of me than, you know, like, well, me, but just how rude and harsh people can be to one another when they're doing this for fun. But this does affect only a very small number of people, so while it technically isn't an issue, I just kind of wanted to bring it up here because I think it begs a discussion, even if a little bit. Have you guys ever experienced this? And if so, what do you guys think we could do to combat this going into the future? I am eagerly anticipating the next expansion. I'm also eagerly anticipating kicking Xenos' butt once again, hopefully this time once and for all. I'm looking forward to participating in and clearing the 3rd Nier Automata raid, and you know what? Also, just generally, the continued success and growth of Final Fantasy XIV as a whole, as a game. It has continued to improve in every form over the course of its life, and with the success it's had recently, I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I mean, it's definitely plausible for it to go ahead here and pull a Wrath of the Lich King and spiral downward after Shadowbringers, but I highly doubt that. There are so many reasons why Final Fantasy XIV is still the best MMORPG right now that it would take me 30 minutes to go through, and I know that you guys are just not really interested in that. But this patch 5.3, has solidified for me what I'd already known all this time and has given me even more hope for the future. Hopefully with the new extended trial, more of you can get in-game and give this marvel of an MMO a chance and fully experience the intricacies of what makes it the titan it has become. And I hope to see all of you guys in-game as well on the Gilgamesh server. That's a server that both Mrs. Sticks and I play on. We go by Mr. and Mrs. Lentus over there. We also stream over on Twitch at twitch.tv/MMOBite if you want to go ahead and join us in our Final Fantasy streams, in our Final Fantasy XIV journey going into the future. Otherwise, that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to go over the most recent patch 5.3, and kind of interject my thoughts on why I believe Final Fantasy XIV is the best MMORPG currently right now, using this patch as an example. But this is my opinion, my thoughts on the game right now. What do you guys think though? Are you a fan of Final Fantasy XIV? If not, why are you not a fan of Final Fantasy XIV? Let me know down in the comments below and let's talk about it. Anyway guys, that is it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all next time.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.